You've heard about them, but you really don't know much about them. And you want to know more, but there's a lot of misinformation out there. Well, stay tuned for my interview with Whisper AI. Hey guys, thanks for joining us today. I'm actually really excited to talk to these three gentlemen who are here from Whisper AI. We have Andrew Song, who's the CEO. We have Don Schum, the head of audiology, and Jim Kothe, who's the head of sales of Whisper. Guys, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, Amit.
So we have been hearing about Whisper AI for a few months, maybe even over a year. And there's been a lot of chatter online, and not a lot of people know exactly what's going on. There's posts about, oh, these guys are actually owned by another manufacturer. Oh, it's just another slick way to get in through different channels. Andrew, can you start by telling our audience a little bit about the company itself?
I'd love to. We are kind of the new kid on the block here in hearing aids. We're a hearing aid manufacturer based right here in the United States. Our headquarters is in San Francisco, California, and we work exclusively with hearing care professionals. So at Whisper, we design, develop, manufacture, and then work with hearing care professionals to distribute our product, which is called the Whisper Hearing System.
What did you see? So, you come into this hearing care space. What did you see as something that was missing in the hearing aid industry?
Well, my background, I'm sort of a newcomer to the hearing health space. My background's actually in computer science and technology and development, mathematics, fields like that. And back in 2017, when the company started, I saw that there were really two important and interesting ideas that could really belong in hearing health. They were the first of that was that artificial intelligence, which we see more and more in products every day, they could help us build a really great hearing aid, a better performing hearing aid, not just in the sense that someone could connect to Siri or Alexa, but it could actually help improve the signal processing on the device. And so we saw an opportunity to use artificial intelligence or AI to make a better sounding hearing aid. That was the first idea that I thought could belong in hearing health. The second one is that, as we see with all of the other products that we experience every day, our hearing aids weren't getting better over time. They weren't being upgraded. Unlike our phones, our TVs, our computers, our cars even. And that was also an important piece. You know, my grandfather, when he uses his hearing aids, I see him lagging behind the latest technology. And this important idea that hearing aids should be getting better over time, they could get better over time, was the second idea that I thought was really important as Whisper started. And so that's in 2017, that's when we decided to start the company. And our hope was to create this new category of product, a learning hearing aid that was a little bit different than all the other products that people are used to working with.
Yeah, so that learning aspect is so different from a lot of the other technologies. We've heard about data learning from some of the manufacturers, but we haven't heard of this upgradable system per se as something that could be as common or commonplace in the hearing industry. So can you tell us, so let's dive in a little deeper on the actual technology. So can you dive in a little bit more on the Whisper AI system, please?
Yes, for sure. I think I think it's important to understand some of the unique aspects of our system. The first is that there's actually two components in the Whisper hearing system. The first are what we call earpieces. They're receiver and canal, kind of RIC devices, sit behind the ear with a wire and a receiver in the canal, just like probably a device and a form factor that everybody listening is very, very familiar with. And in the Whisper system, that's where all of the key sound processing technology that we've all been used to for the past decade, that's where that lives, whether that's a compression system, great feedback management, directionality, gain management, all of these things that we're used to providing our patients, those exist in the first part of a Whisper hearing system, which are the receivers. The unique part of the Whisper system, though, is what's called the Whisper Brain. So this is kind of a palm-sized, pocket-sized device, and it works wirelessly with the earpieces. So it's not like a dongle or a remote mic where you have to put it in a specific locations. When you're using the Whisper Brain, you can just have it nearby, on a table, in a bag, anything like that. And what the Whisper Brain is doing is it brings a lot more processing capability to the table. It's what enables the AI sound processing of our system. It's what it it's what enables the learning aspect, and together we call that the sound separation engine. And so what's really interesting about the product is that it's really designed to have the simplicity and the flexibility of RIC devices that we're all used to. You know, if you're going gardening in the backyard, it's very convenient to just continue wearing your RICs, go outside and do your thing. But we wanted to make sure that our patients were also getting the extra processing capability that they needed when they needed it. And that's where the Whisper Brain comes in. So when you're out and about, or when you feel like you want that extra capability, that's when you can just bring the Whisper Brain with you. So there's also 2 ways to use the device too.
So the Whisper Brain, it's not a very big unit. I've seen it only in pictures, of course, but it's only about, how big would you say that brain is?
It's about, kind of maybe a bit smaller than palm. Oh, Jim's holding one up right now.
I'm seeing a couple of brains being shown on screen here. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So it really is designed to be, easy to use and very easy to keep around you. I know some patients are used to using things like remote mics where it has to be kind of clipped on somewhere, or we all seen the streamers where they have to be wearing a neck loop and things like that. The Whisper Brain is very different. It is an external device, but it can just stay in your pocket, and there's no microphone or anything like that you need to position.
So it's kind of a nice additional tool that you carry with you when you need it, but you don't have to have it with you right in your hand or around your neck, like you said, like a streamer. Right?
No, it's not exactly. And that we knew would be really important because there's just, there are simple things that people do in their lives. I use gardening as an example. Everyone has their own example where just the receivers are providing the type of hearing support that a person needs.
So let's talk about comparisons if you don't mind. So we're talking about additional sound processing using AI, using the brain. How would this compare to, let's say, a premium level hearing aid from any other manufacturer out there?
Well, that's a really great question, and I think it's helpful to first start with kind of what a premium level hearing aid from any manufacturer is doing right now, which is also what's happening inside of the Whisper earpieces. So let's say, I'm wearing these devices and I walk into a noisy place and you're speaking to me, right? There's several technologies that we've developed already on an earpiece that each manufacturer has developed to help improve that situation for the wearer. Usually there's some sort of scene classification, kind of scene analysis, and that just tells the hearing aid, okay, Andrew is in a noisy place, someone is trying to talk to him. Let's try to, improve the spectral subtraction algorithms to get rid of some of the stationary noise, that whirring fan, those types of things. But really, a lot of the earpiece is limited because it's only using frequency information. It's only using the information in some of those frequency bands. And so what do I mean by that? Well, let's take example of gain management. When I walk into that noisy room and you're talking to me, what most hearing aids are trying to do is say, okay, where's the speech area of this situation right now? And most speech frequencies we've defined sort of as 500 hertz to maybe 3.5 kilohertz. We'll try to increase some gain there. We'll try to lower gain everywhere else. This is probably something every professional is very familiar, thinks a little bit about. But with the Whisper hearing system, we have a whole new set of tools, a much more powerful set of tools. What AI lets us do is it lets us go deeper into that signal and allows us to understand some of the patterns within the sound so that we can make processing changes based on that. Now, what's a sound pattern? That sounds like kind of a really abstract, but it's all the things that we've learned to understand. When you're listening to my voice, it's my voice because it has a certain pitch, it has a certain timbre, I speak at a certain speed, and that's different than Jim's voice. Even though they're both within speech frequencies, we're able to isolate, AI lets us isolate kind of my voice and recognize it as a separate type of pattern from Jim's voice or from a coffee machine, which also happens to make sound within those speech frequencies, what we call speech frequencies. And so all of that put together means not only we have a much kind of more intelligent set of inputs to make decisions with on the hearing aid, but we can also go back to what's important and make better sounding hearing aids. We can help improve the sound quality. We can help improve the amount of noise performance because we're being much more isolated in what we're targeting. Yeah. So that's what AI brings to the table for us.
Yeah, and we're going to hear from Jim in just a moment so we can all hear Jim's voice. But before that, recently we all heard the news, and it was actually quite surprising and really piqued a lot of our interest that an industry icon such as Don Schum Uh, why are you laughing?
You're too kind.
After numerous years working under the DeMont Corporation, doing a lot of their research, and now he jumped over and, of course, piqued our interest that, hey, if someone like Don Schum is going to be involved and Jim is involved, there must be some validity to this, obviously. So, Don, if you can kind of share your perspective and talk a little bit about the audiology side of it as well, please.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for the kind words, sincerely. The thing about the hearing aid industry is that it's developed well over the 30 plus years that I've been an audiologist, the 25 years that I've been in the industry. We've seen some great improvements in technologies. There's no doubt about it. But there have been some roadblocks too. There's been some areas where despite all the kind of traditional approaches we've employed across the industry to try to solve some problems, there's some problems that still have been very hard to solve. The industry has had a couple different reactions to that. One has been, okay, let's start focusing on a lot of other things that hearing aids could do for patients, like connectivity and rechargeability and all those things, which are all extremely important to do in a hearing aid, very important to attract users to hearing aids and things like that. But the very sole reason why anybody starts looking for hearing help and they get out on Google and start searching for hearing help is because they're having trouble hearing, and they're having trouble hearing typically in difficult environments. And so in order to, the other type of reaction the industry has shown, and especially Whisper, is that is the number one problem that we should be paying attention to. And there's a lot of work being done in all the other areas to improve performance and acceptability of devices. And Whisper is very much wants to be involved in those areas too, and is involved. But the number one priority of using the Whisper hearing system, using the brain, is to attack the big problem that continues to vex patients with hearing loss, which is hearing in complex environments. And the traditional approaches, the signal processing approaches that have been used for the noise reduction element of a hearing aid have improved over the years, but they also have been plateaued and to some degree. And the thing that really attracted me to Whisper was that sort of bold attitude that was necessary from somebody outside the industry, like Andrew and Dwight Crow, the other founder, to say, it's not good enough. We can do something better. And so the whole idea of saying, let's use the brain. Let's use the brain because it brings a level of processing resources to the problem that we've never dared to think we could do before. And I know a lot of the reaction to hearing care professionals is that my patient will never use that. But it's like, well, why did your patient come raise their hand in the first place? Because they wanted help. And to say, this is what a system that can bring you the maximum amount of help looks like. And I've been surprised as I've been talking to many of the hearing care professionals who started with the Whisper system. They've been telling me to some degree that it's not a problem for the patients. The hearing care professionals might have an initial, like I did, initial reaction to, the brain, I don't know about the brain. But a lot of them are telling me, the patients just want help. And if this is what is necessary to bring them help, then they're all for it. And so that's why I'm here, is because it was a very intriguing sort of concept of what could a hearing aid really be if we wanted to take it to the next level. And that's what we're doing at Whisper.
Yeah, as somebody who's out in a private practice in Los Angeles, where I see patients all day long, on top of interviewing these, fine folks like you guys, the primary objective with my hearing aid patients has to be signal processing, sound perception, hearing, speech, and noise. To me, and I'm in the minority here with hearing care professionals, that I don't give my patients a lot of custom memory settings. I usually don't. I let the automatic processing do what it's supposed to do, and let, pardon the pun here, let our brains kind of adjust to the environment so that our brains do the work, and the hearing aids are the tool to get it there. So having this additional brain to do a lot of that processing is actually quite impressive. And the nice thing that I also heard, and maybe this is where Jim, I'd like to ask you, I was extremely happy to hear, and I think there's some misinformation out there about how you guys are rolling out. And I was very happy to hear that you guys are actually going to be working with audiologists and hearing care professionals, and you are not going direct to consumer. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. It's funny, you know, whenever people hear whether it's a Silicon Valley based company and they're dealing with AI, people just automatically assume it's going to be direct to consumer. But the things that you were just saying, Amit, about how you help your patients interpret what's out there and what's going to be right for them. You know, if you're trying to just build something cheaper or get it out there quicker, sure, people are going to go direct to consumer. But that is not what we're trying to do here. Like Andrew and Don just said, we're attacking one of the biggest problems that people have with their hearing. The only way to do that effectively is to do it with hearing care professionals. You know, we talked a little bit about the idea that this is a learning system. People will need guidance through that learning process. We need to make sure that as the system learns and it gets better, that people can take advantage of that. So this is a very intentional choice for us that the professionals should be involved in this process, and that's why they are.
So how are you guys working with us in the sense that how are you reaching out? How do we reach out to you? Can anybody be part of the Whisper AI?
Revolution is the word you're looking for.
How do we join the revolution? So maybe if you can touch on that, Jim, please.
Well, not just anyone, Amit, but we are right now in the process of talking to practices who think this might be something that would be right for their practice. And of course, it isn't right for every practice. But the people who are a little more forward thinking, those who can see that this is something that their consumers would really react well to. There's a couple things that are different. We've already talked about the form factor. That's one thing that's a little different. This idea that it learns, that might be attractive to people's patients. We also do this under a subscription system. That's a little bit different. We can talk a little bit about why we do that subscription system. But the practices that see these things as an advantage for their patients and would be interested in talking to us, we are very, very open to talking to them right now. So we have a relatively small staff right now of 8 people who we talk to and help onboard practices, and are fully committed to those people who really want to take this and use it to differentiate their practice, to bring something new and exciting to their patients. We're fully committed to supporting those practices.
Yeah, and a story that I mentioned, I told Jim that just a week or two ago that I reminded him back in 2000, all the way back in 2001. I can't believe you didn't remember this, Jim, but he actually came to our program when I was in school, and he asked this question, and the question was, if there was a perfect hearing aid, how much would you pay for it? Or what is the value? What is your value? And of course, all my classmates, including myself, we wrote numbers down, and some of them were like $10 and some were up to like $10 million. And after we wrote them down, Jim said, well, that's how much you value better hearing. So when you talk about subscription, and of course that lasted all the way till now, almost 20 years later, I still remember that story very vividly because I now in hindsight, I reserve the right to change my answer. The idea is that when you talk about a subscription model, and you just mentioned it, can you talk about what that looks like for a practice like, for example, ours?
Yeah, so I do remember that, Amit. What I didn't remember is that you were in that class. but yeah, we used to ask that a lot just to create this conversation about how do people value their hearing. And one of the things that we have learned over time is that a lot of people value their hearing, but they get a little bit stuck on the fact that hearing aids are bought by paying for them all up front. And the idea of paying $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 up front is just a tough one for a lot of people. We also think it's going to get tougher in the future here now with more over-the-counter and more competition, and people know they can go to Costco. They get very confused over this idea of why do hearing aids cost what they cost. So we decided to go with a subscription system so that it can be easily accessible for people. It's $139 a month, and that's what they pay for their hearing health care. One of the other reasons that we think that's important is it can change the conversation for the hearing care professional away from this is how you buy your hearing aid and have people think about buying a hearing aid as buying hardware into this is the investment you're going to make in your hearing healthcare. And it includes the use of this system. It includes the upgrades. We're going to make this better and better for you over time. It includes my care. It's always under warranty. So it's a much more inclusive way of talking to someone about this is what your investment in hearing healthcare can be. So now it's important for the hearing care professional too, that even though the patient doesn't have to pay upfront, the hearing care professional is paid upfront, just like they would be for a system now. So that profit comes upfront, but the user can pay over time. So it's a very different way of thinking about acquiring systems and changing the conversation from buying a hearing aid to this is how we're going to treat your hearing healthcare.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds on the financial part of it, but just to clarify, so the patients themselves are paying Whisper directly, correct?
We actually use an intermediary. We use a company that's used to doing this in the industry so that they know how to collect the payments and talk to folks as they need to. So they have a lot of experience talking to people with hearing loss. So yes, we use an intermediary. They're the ones collecting payments from the patient. Most of it is just done automatic withdrawal. And then we would pay the professionals the profit at the time of that start of that subscription, yes.
So in terms of, we've talked about all these things, how has the reaction been so far? I'm assuming that you guys have done some R&D and some beta testing, of course. How has the reaction been so far with the folks that have been involved in this?
Well, it's been really good, of course. Let me start maybe with the patients, because the reaction we look to them for is how well are they hearing. And when they're hearing well with the system, we hear some really exciting things. They talk about the quality of sound. They talk a lot about the depth of sound, the access to information they have. And they talk about how well they're hearing voices. And that's really what we're after. So we have to start with how well are people hearing, because that's the first decision that they make on whether they're going to use a Whisper system. Then after that, they do get pretty excited about this idea that it also will continue to get better. So if I'm hearing well today, and I know that a few times a year, there can be an upgrade to the system, that gets really interesting to them. So it's also a really easy concept for them to think about. We're not talking about features of hearing aids. We're talking about something that's really intuitive to them. They know other products get better. And then I would say the other thing they react to is what we just talked about, this lease system, the fact that they don't have to pay up front and it's a reasonable cost to them. For a lot of people, that's very attractive. So from the user side, the reaction has been very good. On the professional side, I guess I'd have to start in exactly the same place. The professionals are happy that their users are hearing well with the system. That's what we're all in this for. So when they see success with patients, then they get more excited about the system. But a couple other things that I think the professionals are happy about is because they're doing these upgrades for people, and we have done our first upgrade already just last month in March. When they see the positive impact that has on someone, now I said, when this is a way to keep these patients closer to my practice all the time, rather than worrying about, are they going to wander off to a competitor, to Costco or something? So they know they're going to come to me every 4 months to make this system better. So it's a way to keep them really close to the practice. And in that way, again, I think this really changes the relationship for people. I've been thinking a lot about the way that traditional hearing aids are sold, where we kind of sell someone hearing aids, so we sell them hardware, and we know they're going to hold on to them for 3, 4, 5 years. And in a weird way, when they come back at year 4 or 5, what we're hoping is that they're hearing bad enough that now they need new hearing aids. That's not a great way to think about hearing healthcare. What we're really after is we've helped somebody every step of the way. So after 3 years, they're at a point where they're hearing so well that they want to start a new subscription. And that's the relationship that we would really like to see between the patient and the hearing healthcare provider.
That's perfect information. We know that so far patients are doing really well. providers are happy, their patients are hearing well. I have AUD students who rotate through my office, and one of the first things I tell them is, our job is to make sure our patients hear well, obviously. But I also have a sinister reason why, is because I don't like patients complaining to me. So of course I have to do the best job I can to make sure they're hearing the best they can, because if they're not hearing well, they're going to come and complain. So a lot of times it's not so much, hey, let's do the things that I want to do because it's so cool and fun and add all these settings and things. Sometimes it takes this additional thing like the brain that, maybe using something like that can really improve that patient experience. And so using something like the Whisper, maybe you guys can explain, whether it's Don or Andrew, how many levels of technology are there? I know I'm coming from more the traditional hearing aid side of it and asking that question, but I'll let you answer, please.
We try to keep it simple at Whisper. There's one product at one level, and that goes back to what Don and Jim were speaking of earlier. I think hopefully this is the mantra that people really hear from us, is that we really hope that people get great hearing care, and we hope that our product, the Whisper Hearing System, can really help them with that. And so having a bunch of different lines, a bunch of different price points, for us right now is counter to that goal. We want to work really closely with the professionals. We want to make sure that people are finding really great success with that. And one of the great parts of our system is that it's, of course, upgrading and getting better over time. So, when we launched our first upgrade a month ago, almost every component in the sound processing, including that AI engine, that sound separation engine, was improved. So for those patients who are already using the Whisper Hearing System, it's like they were getting a brand new set of technology, but at no additional cost to them. So that's where we want to focus on in terms of our product development, in terms of in terms of how we roll things out, because that's where we think the patients will ultimately feel a difference.
I was going to say, one of the interesting things that I've, picked up on, and being in the industry so long, is that engineers always have new ideas, and they're always like, oh, we could do better, we could do better, we could do better. And in a traditional development model, you have to wait 3 or 4 years until the next major product release to implement all the things you want to implement, and then you have to kind of line up the resources and get that done. The very nice thing about the upgrade system is it's like, oh, that system could be a little bit better if we change this parameter or whatever, and that can happen. And so several times a year, though, all those little things can happen in the product. And it's just a very refreshing sort of idea that if the compression system needs to be tweaked, or if the frequency response needs to be tweaked, or the sensitivity of the directional system needs to be improved or decreased for whatever reason, those can be done on the fly. And it's not something we'll say, well, 3 years from now, we'll have something new, or, the next time we release a software update or whatever. These are happening constantly throughout the year for the patients. And that's a big thing, because you always find things that can be done better in a hearing aid.
So when can we expect kind of a full rollout? Are we live already in terms of I can contact you and start working with the product, or when can that happen?
Yeah, we are live. So if you have interest, by all means, contact me. It's Jim at whisper.ai. That's relatively easy. And we'll make sure that someone gets back to you and has a more full conversation of what this all means.
That's great. And I have thousands of questions. I've got so many other questions, but I think I'm going to leave the audience hanging, because you guys are actually going to be presenting a virtual presentation at the 2021 AudBoss Summit, which is coming up this October in the fall. And we're going to do a nice presentation kind of describing a little bit more, getting into the weeds of what the process is and what the brain is doing and what the product looks like and feels. And we've been showing pictures of the product throughout this interview. I've been putting the links below here so people can click on it, including Jim's email. I really thank you guys for taking the time of explaining a lot of this. I think this really clears up a lot of the confusion and misinformation that's out there. Before I let you guys go, I'll go one by one. Don, is there anything you want to say before I let you guys go?
No, nothing particular, other than the only thing I would tell audiologists and hearing care professionals is don't buy into the idea that the field inherently has to collapse in on itself. Managed care, Costco, OTCs, those are all changes in the field without a doubt, and those are going to happen. But there's still a big space for excellent hearing care for patients for the biggest problems that they face. And that's where Whisper lives. And I think that hearing care professionals should recognize that it's up to them to want to be in that space. And there are partners on the industry side who also want to be in that space with you.
Yeah, I'd agree with Don. We're a really optimistic group of people. We know that things can get better for users. We know it can get better for hearing care professionals if we work together. I think Don and I feel it more from an industry point of view that, we know what some of the things are, but Andrew and Dwight, our founders, feel it more from a personal point of view too, of what they've seen their parents go through. So, this is a profession. We treat this like a profession and not like a place selling hardware. And I think if we do that together, and that's why we're looking for the right partners to go on this journey with, I think we can make life better for a whole lot of people.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that, and Don, you as well. And Andrew, coming from the technology side, working with these two amazing guys from the hearing care space, who are, again, icons, if you will. Any last words, Andrew, before we let you guys go?
No, it's very exciting to be able to work with not just Don and Jim, of course, but every clinic that works with us, every patient that uses the Whisper hearing system. And I hope maybe from today's presentation that people get excited about those two ideas that really started Whisper, that we could have a better sounding hearing aid and that it could get better over time. And so if that idea and those concepts, I think, fit into someone's practice, then we'd love to speak with them.
Perfect. You guys, thank you so much for joining us. If you guys have questions, you can email jim@whisper.ai. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks.
Great seeing you.